So we both, जो मैं बोल रहा हूँ आप भी बोलें, okay? We inaugurate citizens for begging free India. I have two stories to share with you. The first story is from about 6 months back. I was in a tribal hamlet in the place of Arak Valley, which is in Andhra Pradesh. I was on the roadside I was doing a research project over there. So on the roadside there was a women from the tribal community selling me coffee. So Arak Valley is known for its organic coffee, and so I stopped by on the road just to get the coffee from them. 10 rupees, I was picking my purse out to pay the money. And then I thought there was a stunning revelation. Instead of me taking the money out, by the time I was reaching for the purse, I was shown a UPI QR code. That was stunning for me for multiple reasons. First, it showed me how India Stack was working in practice. So we had Bhagnaji, a slide earlier, who was reading ONDC for instance. So India Stack is a combination of different things. Aadhaar plus it's the UPI payments plus now ONDC. So what I was seeing is the power of India Stack in powering micro entrepreneurship. And that is with ONDC coming in its full flow, I think it's going to really revolutionize how we see marginalized communities, how we see entrepreneurship from rural communities and all of that. So I think there's a big, strong push that Beggars Corporation can have in that space. Given your network with ONDC and linking, as what Rajnikant was saying, handicrafts, local arts, all of that, through ONDC we can really do a lot of joint work in that sense. The second thing that I was learning from this experience that I had with these women was the dignity and the confidence she had in explaining to me where the coffee was coming from, the fact that it's organic and all of that. So that was again an empowering sort of thought in my mind in terms of, okay, this is something different that's happening in the rural markets of India. The third thing that I learned from the same thing is how this is all a local produce or local specialty based initiative, right? So organic coffee is special to Araku. So you're kind of skilling them on a local initiative and then powering it. Same example as we had in the handicrafts thing. So that combination I felt was really powerful, and then with Beggars Corporation, the way you're thinking, that combination I think is going to be the game changer as I see it. We already know Varanasi's very own Phoolwali Anji, where you kind of see local economy of the temple linked to a business and then how that's kind of playing out. Examples of this from beach shores, where there is Sreenu from the beach shore in Andhra Pradesh, where he was selling handicrafts made out of shells. And there's BNG from another seashore, who was a portrait artist. So they had a core skill of either making a handicraft or doing a portrait and complementing that with a lot of other things. So what we are essentially looking at is this combination, which I am calling as some form of local-led venturing, where you are capitalizing on a local need or the specialty at its core and then complementing it with other things in the ecosystem. So what all do we need in that ecosystem? First, we need a certain core skill, because something, either it's a service or a product that we're trying to deliver. There has to be a core skill training element that needs to come into it. Then we are looking at local role models who will inspire this to happen. In this case, Chota Shivji is a model of inspiration, right? So how change can happen. So we need similar role models on entrepreneurial things that we need in this. The third thing that we need are spaces where there is an opportunity for dialogue and experimentation that can happen between the stakeholders, because as we have all discussed in the first half of the discussion, it's not an easy problem to solve. So we need multiple stakeholders in it. Entrepreneurs need to be a part of the discussion so that they understand what the problem is and identify solutions for it through collaborative discussion. So we need these spaces to create. And Beggars Corporation, with your established space, I think can really facilitate the space creation where dialogue and experimentation can happen. With the IIT, BHU and the tech around it and the talent pool that's there, you have the right talent skills in that side, and the combination of that would be really powerful. Fourth is dignity of labor that we attach to whatever we are doing. Right? So that transformation in the mindset of people needs to happen and efforts need to be going. And from your TED Talk, I think what you're trying to do in the first 6 months or 8 months is really what we need. Like the transformation in the thinking of the people that there's a world beyond, and two, they're skilled for the world beyond, and then have the confidence to sell to the world beyond. I think all of these things we need to embed in. The India Stack story already told, because ONDC and India Stock along with it is going to really game change all of this. So this combination I'm calling local-led venture. It's just fancy term. I am a business school academic, so you kind of get fancy terms coming with us in that sense. Where I think Beggars, and I'm not calling it more for what I do, but the attitude that comes with it, I think there's a powerful element to it. I think there are two things in that. One is the perseverance. Be it hot, be it cold, be it rainy, there's a perseverance element to that. So if you can skill them in other ways, they're going to be excellent sellers of whatever it is. So we have powerful entrepreneurial skills already there. It's just they know just entrepreneurial skills. Second is what we know as Nishkama Karma, right? So be it 100 rupees that they get at the end of the day, or be it 1000 rupees that they get at the end of the day, they're happy with both of it. So it's the classic concept of be it a triumph or be it disaster, you kind of treat everything equally, right? So in a festive season you might get a 1000 rupee bonus. In a non-festive season you're getting probably 100 rupees. But then how do you treat both commonly? So business will have your ups and downs. So they're already trained for the business up and downs. So the combination of that from the beggar's attitude along with the rest of it, it's gonna really power all of these things. Second story, very quickly. The first story was more about how we can make India adult begging free. Now, how will we tackle making India child begging free? And that story is a story of education, at least the way I believe. So the school of life is an excellent concept leading into that. My story comes from 2012. We're talking about a decade back. And this is a school that you see in the picture over there. It's a classic government school in a coastal area in Kozhikode, which is in Kerala. As most government schools are in India. I'm not trying to typecast in any way, but then they're kind of known for the infrastructure not being great and the rest of it around it. They had an intervention of a corporate foundation coming into the school, putting in money. Not just the fact they put in money from a charitable basis, but then they worked on something that's called as a venture philanthropy model, where it's not donate, but invest and handhold. So that concept is the same concept as Beggars Corporation. Can we build that into how we look at education for the marginalized? And first, it needs to start with something called due diligence, where you're kind of working with the stakeholders, identifying what the problem is, what the potential solutions are, and have a more long-term plan in terms of how we will go. Then it needs external stakeholders and input in terms of how we are developing the proposal around it. And with Beggars Corporation, with Badrinath ji, with Sanjeev ji, there's a lot of these expert inputs that are coming into it. So that approach is what we need. Third, we need multi-stakeholders in the discussion, which we already discussed about. Use of technology, be it India Stack. In this case, they used something called precast concrete because school education should not be disrupted. So they used a very minimalistic disruption model. So with children education of people like Chota Shivji, it needs to be a way where we are disrupting their education to the minimum, but then ensuring that the learning outcomes are achieved by them in that sense. Fourth is the capacity building that needs to happen with the local stakeholders, by which I mean teachers, students themselves, and all of the parents and all of them around it. We need short-term and long-term goals. Like when you have a powerful vision that's driving your actions, I think a lot of these things are really, really achievable. So we need short-term, long-term impact goals, and then self-sustainability is very, very important. So the model that you are thinking of in terms of a corporation, for-profit, elements around it which will sustain things are really important how we look at it. And finally, there also needs to be an exit plan in terms of how this is played out. So yes, there's hand-holding that is needed, but the hand-holding shouldn't be lifelong hand-holding. So there needs to be a planned, phased transition that happens in terms of how the hand-holding happens, because we are not making people to be dependent on us, rather we are hoping to train people to be independent and stand on their own feet. That's what we are trying to do. This we can do with education, this we can do with child beggars, this we can do with adult beggars. So for child beggars, education is the way. For adult beggars, rural entrepreneurial ecosystem models are really what we want to do. So I'll stop at that. Thank you so much for your attention.